Russia is preparing to attack Europe. Trump is urgently flying to the NATO summit. And while some leaders are shaking hands in Ankara, the Netherlands, one of the main donors of drones for Ukraine, announces, that's it, the limit has been reached. And at this same summit, there's an entire package of decisions regarding Ukraine. What was actually decided about Ukraine? What did Trump say about ending the war? And is he really ready to tighten the screws on Putin? Or is it just words in front of the cameras again? And why is the country that gave so much to Kyiv suddenly saying, stop? In this episode, we'll break everything down step by step. Like and subscribe. Let's get started. The British newspaper The Telegraph, citing the Polish outlet Onet, has published alarming information. Washington has repeatedly sent warnings to Warsaw that Moscow is considering options for a limited armed provocation. This is not about a full-scale invasion, but rather a targeted strike aimed at testing NATO's response and forcing the West to slow down its support for Ukraine. Importantly, the sources of this information are not just abstract insiders. They are people from the closest circle of Polish President Karol Nawrocki, representatives of the Polish Ministry of Defense, ambassadors of alliance countries, and sources in the Baltic security sphere. All of them confirm this information independently of each other. The scenarios range from a quiet option, where a hybrid attack on the border would be presented as a navigational error or a failed rescue operation, to a loud ground invasion on the eastern flank or massive drone strikes on critical infrastructure to lure out air defenses and find vulnerabilities in the defense. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is responding in a measured way, without unnecessary emotion, but warns that the coming months will be critical, especially for the Baltic countries. In the Kremlin, of course, everything is denied, and Peskov dismisses this information, calling it Western propaganda. However, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski responded aptly. If Russia assures that it is not planning anything, it means either another lie or that Moscow abandoned its intentions precisely because they were exposed in advance. It is telling that even within the alliance itself, there is no unified front when it comes to assessing the risks. For example, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson publicly expressed skepticism during the summit in Ankara, suggesting that Russia is all too aware of the catastrophic consequences of attacking a NATO country. So while tension reigns in Warsaw and the Baltic countries and intelligence agencies are sounding the alarm, a two-day summit has begun in Turkey, watched closely by the entire world. What agreements have the politicians reached, and what conclusions have they come to? Stay tuned to find out.
A two-day NATO summit is underway in Ankara, the results of which may provide a preliminary answer to the question of whether Europe can count on the United States as an ally in confronting Russia and other dictatorial regimes. Donald Trump has recently continued to criticize European partners and stated that he is attending this summit only out of personal respect for Erdogan. At the same time, the summit schedule was shortened to accommodate the American president. The summit began with the signing of a number of effective agreements with Ukraine's partners. With Dutch Prime Minister Rob Jetten, the Ukrainian president signed a drone agreement. The document provides for cooperation in the fields of security, defense industry, military expertise, cybersecurity, technology, research and development, and the exchange of experience. The Dutch government has committed to providing military support to Ukraine totaling €9 billion through 2029. A similar cooperation agreement on drone technologies has been signed with Denmark and Estonia. A drone deal with Germany is in preparation. Thus, the number of drone agreements Ukraine has concluded has increased to 9. 3 of them are in Ankara alone.
It has fundamentally changed. These are revolutionary changes in the very nature of war. They are as significant as those that occurred during the First World War, when machine guns began to determine the outcome of battles, or with the development of modern tank warfare, which had a profound impact on Europe during the Second World War, or with the invention of missiles. Today, drones and the very technology of conducting warfare at a distance represent a revolutionary change in the technology of war.
Speaking at the Defense Industries Forum on the sidelines of the NATO summit, Zelenskyy emphasized that Ukraine's defense capabilities have become some of the strongest in Europe. He spoke about Ukraine's successes in drone warfare and called on partners to help Ukraine with air defense systems. Zelenskyy also added that Ukraine has a high rate of shooting down cruise missiles.
We have increased the interception rate of Russian Shahed-type drones to over 90%. This means thousands of Russian attack drones are being shot down every week. And with all due respect, no other country has the capability to defend itself against attack drones on such a scale. The realities of this war forced us to create it, and today we are defending ourselves against hundreds and hundreds of attack drones every day and every night, against thousands and thousands every week and every month.
In turn, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stated that the alliance's partners will invest over $40 billion in developing the alliance's capabilities to defend against drones over the next 5 years and will increase the number of drone operators fivefold. Rutte also traditionally called on European countries to increase their defense spending.
We cannot continue to be overly dependent on the United States. We need a much stronger Europe within a stronger NATO. Europeans realize that the primary responsibility of governments is to ensure security. The second task is to have a strong economy. And to deter Russia, both are necessary.
On the sidelines of the NATO summit, Zelenskyy also met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who announced a new support package for Ukraine worth $900 million. In turn, Norway announced that it is allocating more than $300 million for anti-aircraft missiles for Ukraine. Norway, together with Denmark, Germany and Canada, will order new Patriot missiles directly from the US manufacturer. The main meeting with Donald Trump is still ahead for Zelenskyy. It is scheduled for today in the corridors of the summit at 14:30 Kyiv time. Before the US president headed to the summit, he received a phone call from Putin. Trump says that after the call, he has reason to believe that the end of the war is closer than anyone can imagine, and in his opinion, Putin is under pressure.
I had a very good conversation with President Putin, who, by the way, has great respect for President Erdogan. We had a long conversation yesterday, and I also spoke with President Zelenskyy right after that. I think they both want a deal. It's unfortunate that this has gone on for so long, but I think something will come out of it.
Trump, as usual, reminded everyone that he ended 8 wars and is planning to resolve the 9th.
Mr. President, it seems you are expressing optimism that a deal between Russia and Ukraine is close to being signed. Why do you think so? What has changed? Is Putin ready to make concessions?
It has changed. I just don't want him to kill people.
The formal topic of negotiations to end Russian aggression against Ukraine is not the main item on the NATO summit agenda, but the war in Ukraine is being actively discussed there, as is Europe's allocation of funds to counter Moscow. As Reuters reports, Russia is mentioned in the draft final declaration as a long-term threat to Euro-Atlantic security and stability. Therefore, European countries have already agreed to invest about $50 billion in defense. In this way, they want to show that they are taking Trump's demand for more active rearmament seriously.
But alongside the signing of large-scale defense agreements worth billions of dollars, the summit also revealed the other side of the coin. The Dutch Minister of Defense, Dylan Yeşilgöz-Zegerius, candidly admitted in the corridors the country has exhausted its capacity to supply direct weapons from its own stockpiles. When asked about new missiles for the Patriot system, she replied succinctly, "The warehouse is empty." And this is despite the fact that the Netherlands has already allocated 9.1 billion euros to support Ukraine, earmarked another 11.6 billion for future expenses, and set aside 1 billion for joint procurement of American weapons. So this is not about an unwillingness to help, but rather about the objective exhaustion of resources. Now, The Hague is adopting a different strategy to pressure partners to switch to long-term contracts with manufacturers instead of simply clearing out their own stockpiles. This is the strange paradox of the summit. Some are signing new contracts, while others openly say that from now on, only new production is possible. However, the main intrigue is still ahead. Today, July 8th, Wednesday, is Donald Trump Day in Ankara. He has a meeting scheduled with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, where they will discuss the future of the war. Notably, on July 4th, just before the summit, Trump had a 90-minute conversation with Putin, offering his role in seeking a resolution to the conflict. Ukraine expects clarity from this meeting, as well as strengthened air defense, new aid packages for 2026 and 2027, and tangible results from more than 20 planned bilateral talks. European politicians hope that Trump's personal fondness for Erdogan and Rutte will help avoid scandals, but there is no complete confidence, given how often the American president allows himself to criticize NATO. Whether this meeting in Ankara will mark the beginning of real progress or will be limited to another ceremonial handshake for the cameras, we will find out very soon. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel and like this video. We'll see you in the next episodes.